We now move to a fireside chat redefining CEO's priorities, tech sustainability, inclusion. Our speaker is Alison Rose, CEO NatWest. Alison is the first woman to lead one of the UK's big four banks. She's previously been shortlisted for the most influential woman in investment banking awarded by Financial News, included in the Women in FinTech Power List, and named in Vogue's top 25 most influential women. This session is being chaired by Rekha and Menon, Chairperson NASSCOM and Chairperson and Senior Managing Director Accenture India. Rekha has been leading industry voice on advanced technology-led innovation and socio-economic progress. It's over to you, Rekha. Take it away.
Thank you, Shreya. This is a very important topic for all of us because we're really in an era of stakeholder capitalism with growing consensus that multidimensional value creation makes absolute business sense. And CEOs are being asked to redefine their priorities with inclusion and sustainability right at the top of their agenda. But it's early days in the journey for most. So I'm delighted to be speaking with Alison Rose, CEO of NatWest Group, because she's a powerful and a very inspiring voice on purpose-led growth. And she's a business leader who's also showing us how it can be done. So a very warm welcome to you, Alison. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Lovely to be with you.
So let me start straight away. My first question really is, increasingly, companies are embracing the idea of following a purpose. When you became CEO of NatWest Group, NatWest was facing significant challenges on several fronts. Yet, one of the first things you did was outline a vision that emphasized the need to be purpose-led. Why was that important?
Yeah, I mean, it was very important to me because it was about defining the future of the bank. I think in any role as a CEO, setting the vision for the future. And, our bank is critically important to our customers, and our communities and all of our stakeholders. And for me, defining purpose is about creating long-term sustainable value. So I wanted to set the bank on a path where we would commit to long-term value. And that doesn't mean we're not going to be a profitable organization, but it's about balancing the needs of all stakeholders. And it's something that is a great belief of mine that if we do the right thing and make our customers successful, whether they're families or businesses, whether we support communities, then we're inherently important and will create long-term value. So it's about balancing the needs of all stakeholders rather than prioritizing, one over the other. And, banking, I think, having gone through the global financial crisis, we've seen what happens. I've seen what happens, when we chase short-term objectives and don't have our customer at the heart of what we do. So for me, it was about setting a clear direction of travel, making sure our strategy was very aligned, guiding our decision-making and making it a really clear part of building a long-term, profitable, valuable business that delivers valuable, outcomes for customers, communities, shareholders, and all stakeholders.
How did you get the before I ask you the next question, and you've all obviously demonstrated it because last year you returned to profitability, right? If I'm not wrong, and so obviously it works. How did and I absolutely agree that there's an obligation, not just to society but to business too, right? And even at Accenture, our purpose is to deliver on the promise of technology and human ingenuity, and we're doing it because we know we can sustain our market leadership. By driving shared success for all stakeholders. So you're absolutely right. It's good for business too, and does drive long-term value. But how did you bring all your stakeholders and employees along? Just very shortly, because that's one of the areas I would suspect you got to push back.
Yeah, I mean, we did a lot of consultations. So our purpose, as articulated, is championing potential, helping people, families, and businesses to thrive. And I put 3 core areas of focus financial capability and education, climate and enterprise were the largest supporter of business. But we did a lot of consultation with our colleagues. People come to work, they want to feel they're making a contribution. They want to feel they're on a meaningful journey, both personally and professionally. So we did a lot of consultation with our colleagues to shape our purpose. We also did a lot of consultation with shareholders, investors, key NGOs, the ones who criticize us as well as the ones who are supporters of us. And we spent a long time talking about it, and we let our values guide us as well. We have a clear set of values for the firm. So it was, very organic. And then we launched it when I launched my strategy 2 years ago. We also recognized that there would be different parts of our stakeholder group who would be more cynical. And I was very clear this was a long-term journey. We would be judged by our actions and our outcomes. I set very clear expectations. I was very clear that we were making purpose something very serious. So it's embedded in, our long-term incentive plans for our executive. I was very clear, engaging all the stakeholders. So I think it's about constantly communicating. Some groups will be more, have different priorities than others, but making sure you keep them in balance is important. But recognizing we engage. And then, of course, 2-3 years into the journey, people can see the outcomes. And I think that's important. But it is a long-term journey and it's a long-term commitment.
Long-term journey, long-term commitment, collaboration is key, consensus is key, and then people have to see the results. And you mentioned climate, and I know that climate is a key part of your purpose-led strategy, and you've actually made some very bold commitments on this front, because in 2020, you provided more than 16 billion in funding for climate and sustainable finance-related initiatives, and you were also at COP26 at Glasgow last year. So what were your main takeaways from those negotiations, and where do we go from here?
Yeah, look, I was delighted. I mean, climate is a key part of our strategy. I think it's the biggest challenge that we're all going to face in our lifetime. And so when you're thinking about long-term sustainable value, we have to all contribute. And as a provider of capital, I have a really important role to play. Where the money goes will make a difference, but also representing, colleagues as well. I think COP26 was a great event. For the first time, I think business was very firmly at the table, and very firmly at the table with finance. And I was very lucky to go to the G7 and the G20 in the run-up to COP26 and talk to leaders there. And the message I could give them was that the finance sector globally, from banks to asset managers to insurance, right the way across the piece, had the money and were committed to financing the transition to a net zero economy. And I think that's really important. Now, we're going to need collaboration, but that is the key. It can't be done just by one person or one organization. But for me, COP26, business at the table, money at the table, there's not a block. A shared sense and a very defined sense of urgency. It's a climate emergency. We really need to do something about it. And I think making sure that we're all working together, and I'm part of different groups on that. But I think what's really important is COP26 was, in my mind, a starting gun. It wasn't, a one-off event. We've got to now deliver on the promises and the commitments and work together to solve some of these problems that we have, and get the collaboration working together, and practical help. That's the area I'm very focused on. Practical help in the hands of businesses and customers and MDBs, to make sure that we can really translate what is, this insurmountable problem into a practical set of change and difference. And, we funded 16 billion. I've now committed 100 billion of financing that we will commit to fund climate and sustainable funding and finance over the next 5 years in order to fund the transition, because we have to make sure the transition is done equitably, that we recognise that everyone is at a different starting point, and that we don't leave either societies, economies or governments behind as we transition globally.
Really powerful. And you're right. There's a transition point, and different countries and companies are at different parts of the journey. And we as leaders have an opportunity to really influence and support all stakeholders to do their bit. And at NASSCOM, as an industry body, we're also seeing this becoming a real ask, because it's an opportunity for us to make a difference, not just to our own organizations, but also to support our clients and support the government with the sustainability agenda. And in India, we're also beginning to see employment opportunities in green jobs, which is a big thing for us because one of the things we all are looking at is more livelihood for people in India. And many startups in India are now focusing on sustainable products and services. My next question is speaking on ESG, and you mentioned social impact, right? So let's focus on social impact. Business leaders and businesses across recognize the importance of making a difference in communities. And in India, we also have a legal obligation to do that as part of our CSR commitments. So what advice would you give to leaders so they can drive better social outcomes?
Yeah, I think it's really about understanding the impact you have on your customers and your communities. For me, the way we've approached it, we have 19 million customers. We're the largest bank for business in the UK. So we have influence and we have responsibility. And I think there is, every leader should recognize that they have a duty to support the communities in which they operate. And the way I describe it is my colleagues live and work in the communities where our customers are. And therefore, the reach that we can have is significant. And I think it's thinking about what practically you can do. For us, if you take the pandemic as an example, and I think globally the pandemic really forced people to reconnect with their communities and think about the impact that they could have. We have a huge campus in Scotland, in Gogarburn. We turned that campus into a food bank for the local community for Scotland so that we could support people in need. And that was frankly a suggestion from one of our colleagues who sent me an email one day and said, the building is empty. We know this is an issue. We partner with people. What can we do? So we turned it into a food bank. We turned our kitchens over to one of our partners, Baxter Story, who we then cooked meals for the local hospitals to enable them to support staff who were dealing with the pandemic. Our staff did calling programs to people isolated at home and stuck. And in India, our colleagues did an amazing job. We paid for, we covered the costs of vaccinations for colleagues and their families and dependents. But our staff actually worked as a volunteering group to support colleagues who were going through different challenges. So for me, I think, for leaders, recognizing you have a long shadow and ability to have a significant impact, and then your colleagues want to be part of helping their community and being connected, and thinking about, where you can put practical help and action based on the local needs of the community, which will vary enormously. With our purpose strategy, we focused on where we can offer the most relevant help. So as a financial institution, building economic resilience, financial resilience in people is really important because it's a big part of health, mental health, well-being, and future aspirations. So we're doing a lot of education. We have a program called Money Sense that goes into school, teaches children about money. We have a program that I call Career Sense that's recently launched, where we've taken all the training I give to all of my colleagues and we've just packaged it and given it to local schools. Climate, where we can educate. An enterprise for small entrepreneurs starting a business. You mentioned enterprise in India. Starting a business is the loneliest, most exciting, most inspirational thing any business person can do. And we as a large organization can help. So I think making sure you recognize your impact, using the weight of your organization to meaningfully improve the lives of where your staff and your customers live and work. I think that's how you can have an impact.
Yeah, no, and we saw this in action during the pandemic here, where our entire industry came together individually, but also collectively to make a difference, not just for their people, but across in the communities, using what we do best, which is using technology to reach the last mile, collaborating across the globe to bring in staff. And we have to make sure that this is not episodic. We have to make sure that this is not a response to a crisis where everybody pulls in, and then we need to make sure that there's a sustainable long-term way that's embedded in the DNA of each organization, and that we are enabling the communities through the year.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that long-term sustainable impact, and I think the point you made there is around collaboration and partnership. We collaborate hugely with a lot of our partners and competitors on things where as I describe it, these things should not be competitive sports. They should be where we can have impact. So, the initiatives we're running on climate, we're working in partnership with lots of our partners, with lots of our competitors, to have scalable and meaningful impact. And I think that's a really important point where we can join forces and solve some of these big problems. They will only get solved together rather than separately.
I agree. I mean, that's the only way. Good minds have to come together and use the best. For my last question, we're one of India's largest technology and leadership event. So my question is, how does technology come into this? How have you used it to help your customers and pursue your purpose?
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, my whole strategy is around technology transformation. I think technology is a power for empowering insight in people is hugely important. And obviously in the pandemic, what we've seen is a super acceleration in adoption of digital and data insight. So for me, digital transformation is working even faster. The data insights that we can now drive from our use of technology and AI and different machine learning allows us to give more insight to know where we can target help and support and growth. And one of our strategic priorities is, that digital transformation. And, the world is moving at a exceptionally rapid pace. If I think of my own organization, almost 90% of our retail customers now interact with us and can meet all their needs digitally. That is transformed from 3 years ago, and it will transform at a different pace again, and it is a core part of our investment. So I think the use of data, the use of cloud, the use of analytics technology, the ability to digitize key customer journeys, the ability to digitize and get personalized insight and deep understanding of our customers over their lifetime will enable us to put our resources where they're most relevant, most important, and can drive the best outcome. So, I think it's a really exciting time. And when I look around, the innovation that's happening across the market, the fintechs, the challenger banks, all of the different elements coming together, it's all helping us learn and raise our game and, providing more choice, which means we have to get better, get smarter, get faster, get more agile, and work in partnership. Because I think we partner with fintechs, we partner with Accenture, with Microsoft, with Amazon. We're developing solutions using data and technology, which we wouldn't have the ability to do in the past. So I think it's a really exciting time using technology to anticipate our customers' needs and then solutions in a very different way.
Well, I'm so pleased you're saying that, because I, of course, strongly believe, coming from the industry, that technology is going to be the catalyst for future growth. It's the catalyst for better business performance. It's going to be the catalyst for impacting the communities, as we spoke. And I love that you spoke about fintechs, because as you may know, India's the third largest ecosystem, startup ecosystem in the world. And last year, we produced about 42 unicorns. So I'm hoping some of our fintech startups are on your list of potential collaborators.
Absolutely. And look, I think one of the really important things for large organizations like me is to make sure that we partner and learn from fintechs and enable and support them. We have huge customer bases that we can work with, and making sure that we use technology. I described the transformation of our bank as building a relationship bank for a digital age. And I think that marriage of relationship enabled by technology and technology enabling human interaction and customer insight is really the nirvana that really delivers long-term value. So, and for me, I don't have all the answers, but there's some amazing answers out there. So that's why I look to partner very significantly.
Well, with that, thank you for really good insights and for food for thought that I know the audience will appreciate. For me, there were a few key takeaways. One, that going last first, that companies have to manage the twin transformation, which is digital transformation that you talked about, and sustainability, and weave it into their DNA. That big changes require bold leadership, as you demonstrated, and therefore CEOs have to reimagine their strategies for long-term value creation, and people-led growth strategy, which can address critical issues all around, and purpose-led growth strategy. That's the need of the hour. It's a wonderful discussion. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Over to you, Shreya.
Thank you so much, Rekha and Alison. What an interesting session that. Long-term journey, long-term commitment, collaboration and consensus is the key. And as long as we understand this, people eventually see the results. The finance sector globally, from banks to asset managers to insurance, are committed to financing the transition to net zero economy. And in all of this, like Alison said, collaboration is the key.